So I'm going to start with kind of how this presentation all got started. As Jake mentioned, I've been teaching at MVCC for about the past, 5 years or so, and I've recently transitioned into a position over at Quantrian, which has been really enjoyable for me. But I definitely still stay in close contact with a lot of the people here at the colleges, and I was speaking to Jake a couple months ago about this actual event. And I was telling him about a lot of the new things that was happening over at Quantrian, specifically about John Reed, and I thought, hey, that might be a kind of a cool little presentation for here at the hackathon. So we were kind of discussing that. And in one of the communications he had back to me, he said, I often mention potential for drones to bypass physical security and capture wireless signals in my classes. And I said, at the time, yeah, me too. I talked a lot about that. We started to see a lot of the news. That was a very, very common thing, and I know I discussed that in a lot of my networking classes. But in the back of my mind, what I really heard was, so remember this, yeah. Bypass physical security, capture wireless, all right, let's see what happens. So we tried to take on this little bit of a problem here. And also in the back of my mind, I knew of other similar things like this that had been done previously on a very professional scale. So just to give a couple that you guys can check out. One was UAV Forge. It was put on by DARPA a couple years ago. You can kind of see at the bottom here, this is right off their website, how they kind of created this little course for professionals to come in and actually see if they could complete it, complete the challenges. And a lot of this was purely research and what can we learn from doing this. And the two things I just want to point out really quick, and I'm happy I went right after AX to kind of take a look at the price tags on a lot of these. And a lot of that is just for the tech, thousands of dollars. I mean, a lot of the military stuff is far north of that. But still, it's not exactly something the average person could afford for a lot of this. I'd also like to point out, take a look at the score, no one actually successfully completed the course. They all kind of, a couple of them sort of crashed, unintentional landings there, but it was a really, really good learning experience for them. Also, a couple of years ago at Black Hat, a couple of researchers produced this, it's in here somewhere, wireless aerial surveillance platform, WASP. And it was something somewhat similar to what you see over there, how they threw a whole bunch of cool tech on there with a lot of professional expertise, a lot of different work from various people, and they said, hey, this is something that actually exists and we can actually do. And then a couple years later, they did something similar at DEF CON as well. That one was about $1,000, give or take the amount of tech you wanted to put on it. You could get that easily north of $2,000 or $3,000. But so I kind of had in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I know of these things that have actually happened. So how is this really different? Well, it's really different when you take a look at sort of the rules that I put on myself. And that really comes down to a lot of the different costs and time constraints. I was not getting funded by anybody to do this. And I was getting a lot of good information kind of coming from some of my coworkers, but I'm doing this in my spare time for the most part. So I don't have a research team. I don't have a lot of the professional different resources that you saw in the previous examples. And when I'm doing this with my own money, it kind of matters. I don't have thousands of dollars just to sort of throw at this and kind of go. But the other big things that I wanted to see, thinking with kind of long-term with the hackathon in mind, was I don't want to just see what are the costs from a low-end money point of view, but also from a technology point of view. What were the low-end technology requirements? So I kind of threw this requirement on myself. I want everything to be plug and play. Just not because I can't, but because I want to see what is the lowest barrier to entry from that point of view. And that also really comes down to no soldering. Anybody who's played around with tiny little computers knows it's only a matter of time. People know how to solder in here? And it's fun and you like it and you enjoy it. And yeah, so that's no soldering. And also finally, that last one's kind of important to me. Don't get right, yeah, so. I know there's a lot of legal things, we'll get to that in the end. I do want to just kind of mention, just going kind of along with that, just remember, keep in mind, anything bad that might come from this presentation. Okay, so I will happily take all the credit, but just remember. All right, so I'm going to go through this really, really quick here and sort of see a lot of my different slides. They all kind of have this ready, fire, aim approach. And this is something that we definitely see. I've seen a lot in previous years coming to the hackathon. How students, hackers, engineers, computer scientists, we always have this solving, the way we think about things is I go ready, I think for about 2 seconds, I then immediately fire, go after my very first thing and work on that, and then I might spend some amount of time troubleshooting, some amount of time aiming. I'm not saying this is good or ideal, but I'm just saying it does help a lot, especially as you guys approach this weekend, to know what is your thought process. How do you actually approach the problem? So here's my ready phase. It took about, 5 minutes. I thought, okay, I'm going to need a UAV. I'm going to need something. I'm going to need some type of computer solution to actually do the wireless hacking and stuff like that. I'm going to need some type of network card that can actually do that. And I know I'm going to need to power this tiny little computer. So I started with the computer because I figured if I can't get the computer working, nothing else matters. So anybody got any ideas? We don't have time for ideas. Immediately fire. So why did I go with the Raspberry Pi? Why? The price is really low. Also, I already happen to actually already own one. So I thought, okay, let's take a look at what I already got. As I kind of continued on, I did sort of consider something like an Arduino. But again, it's usually the price tag's a little bit higher. You might end up having to solder things. It's not exactly quite as plug and play. Yeah, of course, I took a look at a lot of the BeagleBoards, the BeagleBones. They've got a lot of really good stuff, but similar. I want something that is very, very simple, so I ended up going with the Raspberry Pi. And this is a picture of my Raspberry Pi. You can kind of see over here on the right, see we got a little USB, so I can plug in a mouse and keyboard. I got Ethernet, so I can plug in the internet. This is HDMI, so I can plug this right into all my normal different peripherals and fire it up. We got a functional computer with a tiny little SD card for the hard drive. Now it's actually time to aim. Now that I've actually decided this is what I'm going to do. And when you start the aiming process, I said, all right, well, what's the software that actually comes on this? And you see it comes with this Raspbian software. I was like, okay, how's that? Yeah. Well, when I started taking a look at it, it seemed to work okay. It was responsive to some extent, but you got to remember, I mean, the Raspberry Pi, it's got this tiny little processor. You're not running Windows on this. You're not putting lots and lots of software. We got very limited memory, all right? So as I started to play around, the next thought was, can I pick up wireless signals? So this is my personal network card that I have over here that I do all my wireless hacking, wireless security testing with. So I took this guy, because I already have it, and I went and I plugged it in, tried to combine the two and see what actually happened. And the answer was, well, yeah, it did sort of work out of the box. When I plugged it in, it sort of was able to pick up Wi-Fi, but not all the features in Raspbian were actually working. So only some of the connect features, not all the disconnect. It wasn't properly adding everything. And Raspbian definitely has no security tools. And as I started downloading the security tools from the internet, they're like, well, you need these 3 other tools. Well, you're missing these 2 dependencies. Well, this version doesn't work. And I was just like, no, we're not doing that. So you kind of also get a sense here for the scale. The network card is way, way too big here, so don't worry, we'll get to that in just a second. But in general, when I kind of just took my first initial approach, combined the two, the answer was, well, this isn't really going to work. So as I kind of went back and looked and said, I think the operating system is really the problem here. So I said, what else are we going to do if we're not going to do Raspbian? Well, let's see if there's some type of Kali build. And sure enough, right there on their website, fully defined, fully laid out with help document, we have Kali Linux on a Raspberry Pi with a pre-built version. And I was like, all right, sure, let's try this. And not only that, but when I was working on this was right when Kali Linux 2.0 had just come out. So it's like, new version? Why not? Let's give it a try. And as I do it, it's compatible 100% out of the box. Everything was good. The drivers were completely working just fine. I didn't have to configure or download any drivers. And security tools, all the security tools were completely up to date. And I was like, yes, okay, this is actually working. All right. So now it's time to actually go back and say, my network card, which was way too big, and it's got these big antennas. I know I'm going to be flying it around. I don't necessarily want to be able to deal with that. Let's see if we can find something smaller. So I spent a lot of searching on the internet because most of these security network cards come with these really, really, really big antennas, and I know I didn't want that. So this was one of the only nano-sized cards that I could actually find on the internet that can still do all your monitor mode, packet injection, promiscuous, all that stuff that's necessary for this type of field. I also would like to point out that they said in the comments it does not work with Kali Linux 2.0. That's a lie. I plugged it right in and it worked just fine. So I kind of solved the problem. I wasn't able to find one that's super small, but hey, that was at least better. So I was like, ooh, things are actually working. So on to the next step. Everything right now has been acting on my table, so I need to start to try to get airborne. And I was talking with John a whole bunch, trying to figure out, all right, I've never really owned one of these, I don't really know too much about it, and I was like, no, too much thinking, let's just go and get one. So this is the first thing that I went and I got off of Amazon. I was planning on spending about 100 to 150 bucks just to sort of see what happens. So I went on the real low end just to sort of see. And so you have an idea for scale here. There's the Raspberry Pi just sort of sitting on top. So this thing is about maybe 12 inches by 12 inches, okay? So it's like, all right, sure, let's give it a try. Let's take them, tie it on, and I went and I tied the Raspberry Pi onto the bottom of the quadcopter, tried to take off, and yeah, success, woohoo, it's working. The thing is actually flying around, zipping around, and it was doing just fine. The problem, though, while it's in the air is what? I didn't actually have it plugged in. Okay, so now it was great, it was airborne, but I didn't have a power source to actually power the Raspberry Pi. Now the thing to know about a Raspberry Pi from a power source point of view is that it needs a nice steady 5-volt power source. You don't want to be giving it an unstable power source like patching it into the drone battery or something like that. So I was like, all right, what can we do about this? I spent some time searching on the internet. Again, Adafruit Industries in my spare time, came across them. They got a lot of good products. I ended up going with something from them. They had a lot of like $5 knockoffs, so you could have got something cheaper, maybe a little bit smaller. But again, the reviews are less than optimal, let's say, so I didn't want to pry out my Raspberry Pi. And they've got a nice little picture there. So I went and I took the two together, Raspberry Pi, cool, battery, cool, tied them on the bottom ends. No, it did not work. I held the thing in my hand at 100% power, let go, and it just slowly drifted down to the ground. Too much weight, too much weight. So, needless to say, I mean, I was sad, and not only was I sad, I mean, I was angry. Because everything up until this point was actually working. And then when I took a step back, just have a step back for a second, look at what I had, I really felt like an idiot. Actually, like, how did I ever think this was going to work? I mean, just do the math here with the weights. That's it. It's not going to work. And I was starting to get a little bit stressed out here because, I mean, remember, I'm just doing this in my spare time. So I wanted to try to say, well, maybe lessons learned. You had some fun. I still got the cool little quad, okay. But that sounds an awful lot like giving up. So we don't really do that. So I ended up doing something that I see a lot of people do, and I highly recommend this definitely tomorrow for a lot of you guys as you get stumped. A lot of times it helps just bounce ideas off of somebody, even if they have no idea what you're talking about, just to kind of think through the problem. So I told somebody who had no idea what I was talking about, and we sort of thought about things for a while, and I sort of said, well, maybe I could cut down the battery, but then, I don't know, maybe you have to do some voltage conversions, I don't want to do that, so we contemplated life. And eventually it really just kind of came out that sometimes you got to go big or go home. That's really all there is to this. So what did I end up doing? I said screw it. And I went and I got something significantly bigger. So in my price range, I went and I got the biggest thing I could possibly find for the least amount of money. And just to put this in scale, remember the last one was like a foot, 12 inches across. This one's 2.5 feet, hex copper, so significantly bigger. All right, and again, it was only about $140, so it's like, okay, cool, that works for me. And if you kind of take a look at it, it's hard to see, I know in this picture, but this is kind of like a dome. So there's actually a whole bunch of space underneath there. So I went and I took my Raspberry Pi with the network card, got my little battery, and I snuck it all up underneath in that dome and tried taking off. And yes, success! The thing took right off like nothing. I tried it without it, tried it with it. It really didn't seem to have too much of a performance. So I'm just like, yes, this actually works. And I've got a nice little platform. But realistically, who cares? I mean, who really cares that I did this kind of fun little thing? Well, let's enter the Wi-Fi security camera business that I know a couple of the presenters mentioned earlier. Okay, so a lot of these things are sold on the internet to small and medium-sized businesses, and they range from $30 to full business solutions that might be a couple $1,000. So you got your $30 solution, your $300 solution, your $3,000 solution that might come with a server that you could store all the video to and manage all of them. So I ended up not getting a whole security system. I just ended up getting one little security camera. That's all that I need. And on every single one, whether it was the large expensive security solution or it was the tiny little guy, they all kind of had that secure Wi-Fi connection. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, Wi-Fi connection, you say. Oh, really? So let's take a look at that kind of secure Wi-Fi connection. So hopefully my VMs here did not crash. I've tried this before and they ended up crashing. So they're on the other screen. You guys see that? This one maybe? Hey, sure enough. So I got the security camera over there in the corner. And hi, X. How are we doing? Yeah, you're part of this. So this is live. It's just streaming to a wireless router that's over on that side of the room. Okay, and this is what the operator would actually see potentially if they've got this loaded up. So also in my other VM here, which again is kind of hard to see, but I won't just pull up the screen, but I got a Kali Linux image here that's running a lot of the same stuff that was previously identified. So this is the part where we see if it crashed here while I was waiting. So I made a tiny little script to just sort of say, all right, we're going to try to find nearby security cameras and then see what we can do with them. So the script is running. You guys wave. Stop. Hello. Okay. So we're now in the movies where the guy freezes the camera, everybody walks in, does all the evil things, and then walks in, and this is what they would see. Now I've let this run for about 20 minutes, half hour before. It just stays like that. It never times out. It never gives you a message to say, well, you've been disconnected or anything like that. So this is where we start to enter the barrier here for security. So let me stop that attack, let that guy reconnect in a couple seconds, and hopefully you'll see. The only thing you really have to tell is the time. The time will jump all of a sudden as soon as it speeds back up. Please reconnect. Hey, there we go. Okay, so that's what you would actually see as sort of, if you put this in practice. Yes, okay. So remember my rules here. I had low time, low money, I'm doing all plug and play technology, all very, very simple things. And if you have half a clue about wireless, you can guess the attack that I was kind of doing. This was very, very, very simple. So if you have security devices, if you have infrastructure that you're building, it doesn't even stand up to the simplest thing. I mean, I start to say, well, how is that security? So I had my little rules here. What was the outcome? For all the different stuff that I actually put airborne, it ended up coming out to be about $200. Okay, and I had that again with you guys in mind that you have to spend thousands of dollars to start the learning process. I don't know, I kind of questioned whether you call this learning or not, but it was kind of fun for me. So I didn't have to do any soldering, I didn't have to do any plug and play technology, and it was kind of fun. So the question that I'll kind of pose to you guys specifically the students here in this room, is how do you defend against Radio Shack? Or in my case, Amazon Prime, which I think is better, that delivers it all my door for free, didn't have to go anywhere. Yeah, it's just the idea. I don't exactly have an answer for this. I'll give it a try to sort of an answer. But this is something that I feel like a lot of people in the news, a lot of people in society are always going, what's the most complex thing coming out of Russia or China? Or from an advertising point of view, you need this security solution and it is very expensive and you need to deploy this. And we've started to notice how marketing has really invaded the cybersecurity field. And I don't want that to infringe on our innovation, the necessary, the really driving force that's really great for this field. So where would I start to sort of answer this question if I was going to in 2 seconds? I'd say number one, it starts understanding the fundamentals. You have to understand the fundamentals of the systems that they are built on, and that is how you be successful, how you're successful when it comes to security. And that definitely overlays into what a lot of you guys are going to be dealing with over the next 24 hours here. I also have a really, really big pet peeve when people sell products or buy products thinking, I am now sold, this is all great, wonderful, and it's like, well, you got to be realistic about what is protected and what is not protected whenever you're talking about security. So hopefully, again, as you're going through your education, you can really have an open mind about these things. And also, maybe, again, for you guys, we might inspire a little bit of cheap learning instead of going and having your 36-hour, fall-off marathon or something like that. Maybe some weekend you'll decide to, maybe I'll try playing around with some of this tech. Okay? And finally, if you're actually going to do anything like this, remember, it's always nice to have somebody to blame. So, please remember everything. Okay, good stuff here, but okay. So, as much fun as it is to pick on Jake, I really enjoy doing that. He certainly would not ask me back again if I left it like that. So, cyber ethics in just a couple seconds here. I think that this is, you've only got a couple seconds to explain it. I think this is one of the best ways to take a look at it. Which guy in the window are you going to be? You're going to be the crummy guy, you're going to be the good guy. And specifically for cyber ethics, something you're going to have to ask yourself and all come up with an answer on kind of continuously is the I know how versus I know better mentality. And that really is what we're going to see a lot, hopefully, as you guys develop into professionals. So the last thing that I would have to say, again, it would not be ethical for me to encourage you to do anything about UAVs without first checking out this site. It's a wonderful little site, it's knowbeforeyoufly.org. They lay out a whole bunch of different guidelines for everything you should know before, even if you're just getting kind of one of the cheap little things that he was saying about flying in your house, it's always good to kind of learn what are the actual legal things that you should be aware of. Here's a list of a whole bunch of references that nobody cares about. And I know I don't have time for questions, so instead I'll leave you with a quote from 100 years ago, and it seems even more relevant today. In these days, a man who says a thing cannot be done is quite apt to be interrupted by somebody doing it.